It wouldn't be untrue to say some people have become slightly driven by the weights and measures of EMTBs in the past few years. Weight, well, it never used to trouble people. It still doesn't to a degree, but the pursuit of the lightest EMTB is never far from the current headlines. Torque and peak power is another measure and varies greatly between the new breed of light to mid-assist bikes. And some people seem to think that those numbers matter a lot. But hey, nobody really cares how fast a light to mid-assist bike can climb, do they? Well, just in case some of you did care, I've arranged a little hill climb party comprising 4 such bikes: the Specialized Levo SL, the Track Fuel EXE, the Forestal Scion, and last but not least, the Pivot Shuttle SL. Now, whilst these bikes do vary very slightly in terms of the weight, the battery capacity, and obviously the price, there's also the business of torque and peak power. Now, you guys have been asking, what is actually the difference when you put these bikes head to head on hill climb? Well, today we're going to find out. On paper, these bikes stack up quite differently. The Levo SL with 35 Nm, 240 watts peak power. The Track Fuel EXE 50 Nm with a TQ motor and a peak power of 300 watts. The Forestal Scion has a 60 Nm motor with a 400 watt peak, and the Pivot Shuttle SL, that's 60 Nm Fazua Ride 60 with a peak of 450 watts. The aim then, given the significant differences in torque and minimal differences in weight, is to see just how much torque and peak power matters. In previous hill climb tests, we've used a technical climb, so we set off up a hill, not very long, but just enough, and steep enough and smooth. The 4 bikes that we're riding today are very much trail bikes in their nature, 29-inch wheels, around 150mm travel, and one very key important point is that they've all got the same tyres and same tyre pressure. Now, that is down to my friend having mounted them because, well, I couldn't be asked. From Andorra, we have the Forestal. Now, this has, I do believe, a Bafang motor on it, 60 Nm with a 360 watt-hour battery. You can see my speed is around about 10 miles an hour now. A lot of you guys said when I rode the Bosch CX Race Limited Edition up a technical climb against the standard CX motors, you guys wanted to see a flatter, smoother climb than one which is very technical and involved a lot of the skills of the rider. So here we have it, flat road, a smooth but steep climb. Wow, you can definitely feel the torque, but I think what I'm also feeling through the motor is there's definitely a difference, I feel at least, in the efficiencies of, say, the Specialized and the Trek compared to the Bafang motor on this bike, and quite interesting the times for sure. Now, Fazua were actually one of the first companies to introduce lightweight EMTBs around about 5 years ago with the e-Zesty and the Evation system. But in 2022, they launched the new Ride 60, a significant advance on the older systems. We've now got 60 Nm of torque and a peak power which is around about 400 watts, which is, you compare that to say the Levo SL at 240, it's a lot more. But the cool thing about this bike is by pressing the button in the high power mode, I'll just demonstrate, it gives you a surge of power and the bike literally takes off. So if you're going from, say, a fire road onto a more technical climb, that's the button you can hit. It only lasts for, I think it's 10 or 12 seconds, but it is a significant increase in power. So I've buttoned off, button on again, boom. And I think that is what makes this bike quite different from the other ones, is that surge of power, which is definitely going to be super useful on technical climbs. 60 Nm. It is quite telling, I have to say, but remember, that is in the top power mode and not the 10 seconds of super high power, which you get only with the Ride 60 system. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be pretty competitive at the end of the day.
The times rolled in. After 2 runs on the 60 Nm Forest Island pivot bikes, there was nothing in it. So we now move to the 50 Nm Trek and 35 Nm Levo, both with less peak power than the previous bikes.
Okay folks, we are now on board with the Trek Fuel EXE with the stunning new TQ motor, HPR 50 on this, 50 Newton meters. You can actually see on the super stealth integrated display here how it shows the watts and your speed. Very neat. Now, the key thing about this motor, it's actually hardly detectable in terms of its sound. It is so quiet on the hill. Now, one other thing is you can actually adjust the amount of power that the bikes deliver. So if you want a longer range, then you turn the power down. So in as much as we're doing a time climb, for a lot of people, range is much more important. Wow. You can certainly feel the ease where you can turn the cranks on the Fuel EXE compared to the Forest Isle bike for definite. One thing I want to point out is, now I know we're doing a head-to-head time climb on these bikes, and I think it would probably be true to say that most people that buy light to mid-assist bikes don't buy them for their climbing speed. They buy them for such things as them being stepping stone bikes into eMTB, or for trail centre riding, or simply the fact that they actually look more like analog bikes than full power e-bikes.
It was interesting to get some basic data around numbers. Is lighter faster? Is more torque faster? How about the efficiency of motors? Will a more efficient motor trump one with higher torque?
Okay, we're now flying with the Levo SL, launched in 2020. One of the first lightweight e-mountain bikes. Now this has got 35 Newton meters of torque and 240 watts peak power. Now, even though it might be one of the lower powered e-bikes, do not underestimate the power this bike gives you in comparison to an analog bike. It is ludicrous, even with 35 Newton meters. I'd be crawling up this hill. Wow, 35 Newton meters, but still a lot different to an analog bike on a steep climb like that. So let's have a look at the time.
So, in the final analysis, the bike with the least amount of torque and peak power wins. It's also the least expensive bike. Time for a bit of head scratching. In short then, more torque and higher peak power are just numbers. But they do matter and will matter on a different climb. But we've seen that other factors might be at play here, and it has given me an insight into other things such as motor efficiency, rider effort, motor software, and as mentioned, the climb itself. But who really cares? At the end of the day, how many people actually climb up roads at max effort? How many people race mid-assist EMTBs for that matter? There are more important differences to worry about when choosing a light to mid-assist bike. What really matters are things such as how the bike handles, the suspension, the battery range, the price, the support and reliability.
Folks, thanks so much for watching today's video. Remember, it's just a bit of fun. It's not an exact science. You know, I could have been pushing 750 watts on one run and 720 on another. So, like I said, it's a bit of fun. But what it did do is actually give us an insight into the efficiencies and how these bikes handle. Remember, it's not just about the speed, it's about how the bikes handle as well. So if you're going to be riding downhill over technical terrain, you know, you're going to get far different results. One thing which I did not mention is the fact that we only rode the pivot in the high power mode. We did not run it in the lunatic mode, which you can get for 12 seconds. So you could argue that on this hill, in the super crazy lunatic mode, that bike would have given you a higher peak power and therefore a faster time. But that's a bit of an unknown because you only get it for 12 seconds. But there you go, folks. Bit of fun in the hills on a Sunday.